All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Joshua Basin Water District for Wednesday, February 21st, 2018. Please rise and join Johnny in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Termination of quorum.
Madam President, all five directors are here. You have a quorum. And I'd also like to introduce to the board for the first time and the public that's here tonight, Mark Bann, our new Assistant General Manager for Operations. He started yesterday. He's got about 20 years of water experience, and he came over from High Desert, and we are very happy to have him working for us. I also wanted to mention there's a full room tonight, so if something does happen, I have to speak up louder? Okay.
And anything you're saying.
Okay, so if there is an emergency reason to exit, that's the exit that you came in. There's another exit over, you go out that door and go left, you go out into the parking lot, okay? So, we're not expecting any emergency, but if there's an earthquake or something, there you go. And with that, I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Unanimous? Public comment. And this is just public comment. This is not the rate increase. This is the time set aside for public comment on any district-related matter not appearing on the agenda. Government code prohibits the board from taking action on these items, but they may be referred for future consideration. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we ask that you go up to the microphone, which does not amplify, but it's for taping the meeting so that we'll get you for posterity. Any public comment? Yes.
It's not about
Not
rates.
about rates.
My name's John Stang. January 5th, when I received the letter from the Joshua Basin Water District regarding the rate increase.
Sir, we're going to do rates at another time. This is just for things that are not on the agenda, not the rates. You'll have your opportunity, lots of time for you when we get to the rates.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Valoran, account holder here. I have a question that I'd like. Could you pass this down? Kurt, could you explain this at some other point? I was looking at the financial data from 17-18, the approved thing, and saw an increase in the administrative staff budget by $100,000 between 15-16 and 16-17. So I'd like at a later time to, not now, but please, I'd like to get the explanation of where that happened. Also, the gentleman that just joined us, thank you for joining us. Just out of curiosity, I looked up your name in the license database for treatment and distribution licenses, and I didn't see it. What level of license do you have? Certification from the state of California?
We can get back to you on that another time. Get into
Okay.
detailed comments.
Well, I looked up in the state database yesterday, and he was not listed, so I'm kind of concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment that's not related to race? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted in a single motion without discussion. Any board member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and acted on separately. The three items are the draft minutes from February 7th, 2018, draft minutes from February 8th, 2018, and the January 2018 check register, which was gone through by the Finance Committee on February 14th. So with that, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, item number 7, public hearing to consider increases to water rates and charges. We recommend the board take the following action: accept and file the water rate study report, hold a public hearing to consider the rate increase, and approve resolution 19-982 implementing the rate increase. And the public hearing will be conducted as follows, and this is item number A. I am opening the hearing as the presiding officer, and we will go first to staff and consultant presentations.
Madam President of the Board, Alex Handler is here to do a report on the rate study. This will be about the 7th time he's done this report, and that'll be a summary of what's gone on.
Hi, Alex, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Okay, great, and I've kind of got a similar summary presentation. I've been here a number of times. There's obviously a number of new faces here. I wasn't planning to go into too much detail, but at the board's direction, if you want me to get into more detail, I'm happy to, obviously. So what I'm going to present is kind of a summary of our findings and recommendations for the water rate study that we've conducted working with the district over the past number of months. Just a quick little bit of background I'll start with, talk about the rates, finances, and some of the financial challenges the district's facing. We developed a number of financial projections under different scenarios, which I'll briefly summarize, talk about the water rate structure, and about what the proposed rates are that are before the board tonight for consideration. Really, the goal of our whole study overall was to, recommend a series of rate increases, which I know nobody likes, but rates that would help support some of the funding needs that the district has. We're kind of at a juncture now. You've got a lot of old infrastructure that's been in the ground 50, 60, 70 years. A lot of things are at the end of their useful life. You're importing water, and the district's at a point now where higher levels of investment are needed to fund the long-term operations of the district. And I know the district's tried to keep rates down over a number of years. I'll show a rate history in a minute, but some of the basic elements of our study included, one, we developed long-term financial projections to identify what are the funding needs of this district going forward, what do the historical finances look like, where do we need to go from here to get to where you need to get to over the long term. Also, a cost of service rate analysis to make sure that the rates are treating all the customers fairly and equitably. And this isn't a process where we just take your data and go back to our office and come back with the answer, because we know there's a lot of different answers. This is a real good process here, I think, working with the district's board, and very much appreciative of the input received along the way from the district's Citizen Advisory Committee. We had a number of meetings, and some of the folks here I recognize from those meetings, but I know we have a lot of new folks here. This slide here kind of just summarizes some of the key meetings of our process. We started last fall working with the district, had a number of meetings with the board and the with the Citizen Advisory Committee, walking through the basic findings, honing recommendations, looking at different financial scenarios, leading through December when the Citizen Advisory Committee recommended a series of rates to the board for consideration. This wasn't the rate increase that got the district funding for everything it needs to do. It was kind of a reduced rate approach, and we call it the phased rate approach. And then in December, the board opted to authorize these level of rates to go out in the Prop 218 notices, which everyone received, and is probably why everyone is here tonight. They're familiar. These are pretty substantial rate increases. Nobody likes big rate increases. We know the district doesn't like having to raise rates. We know ratepayers don't like paying rates, but unfortunately, they're kind of the financial underpinning of everything the district needs to do. So rate increases are kind of an inherent part of the business. One thing I wanted to point out is the rates that were included in the Prop 218 notice. The district cannot adopt rates that are higher than this. I think your options are adopting rates that are, at or below the level in this notice. And even once you adopt rates, you're not forced to implement them exactly as As adopted, you always have the flexibility of reviewing and adjusting rates on a year-by-year basis, providing they're lower or up to the rates that are adopted. And I know the district's done that in the past, but again, I want to point out, these aren't the rates that, this is kind of a compromise rate increase that is being put before the board here. Quick note on Proposition 218, there's always questions that come up about the process, and when it comes to water rates, they're under the purview of California Constitution Articles 13D, Section 6, that was added by a voter-approved constitutional amendment back in 1996. And that constitutional amendment provides certain ratepayer protections with some substantive requirement for rates, and also has a procedure that you have to follow. The substantive requirements are that rates cannot exceed the cost of service, that the rates have to be proportionately recovered, so they have to be fair for all customer classes, and you can only use the revenues for the purposes that the rates are collected. Now, that's not such an issue with a water district, but there were some cities in California using their water and sewer rates to help fund their general fund, so you don't have to worry about that because you don't support police and fire, et cetera. On the other side of the coin, there are procedural requirements that are in the Constitution, and that's why everyone received the Proposition 218 rate notice informing them of the rate increases. I know the district went above and beyond the minimum requirements because you mailed both to property owners and also to the bill payer of record, if they weren't the property owner, to make sure you covered all your bases, which I think is a very good thing. And these rates are subject to majority protest, meaning if more than 50% of property owners submit written protest, the rates can't go forward. These water and sewer rates are expressly exempt from any voting requirements, which is a common misconception. A lot of people think there should be a ballot, but there is no ballot, there is no vote, and that's because the folks who put Prop 218 in the ballot understood that water is a necessary service. And when you start putting things to a vote for political, it turns into a political decision, and who wants to vote to raise rates? Everyone would rather have water be free forever, so they understood this is a cost of service necessity, and that's why they put the substantive and procedural elements in place that they did. Little background on the district's rates and finances. The district is financially self-supporting. Most of the money comes from water rate revenues. The district does have some additional funding. It's got a little tiny bit of property tax revenues. You've got some interest earnings. You've got some standby charges that are charged on some of the vacant properties and some of the customer properties in the district. But by and large, the largest chunk of revenues come from rates. And that's the one thing you have control of. So those rates need to be set at levels that are adequate to fund the district's cost of service going forward. Now, when we look long-term, we know the district's implemented some rate increases over the last decade, small to moderate rate increases some years, no rate increases other years, but when you look long-term, for over 20 years, rates have increased by an average of less than 2% a year, so that's less than inflation. And we know folks have cut back their water use as well, not everyone, but most folks. So people today, are inflation-adjusted terms, are paying less than what they paid over 20 years ago at a time when the district's facing a lot of financial challenges. So that just kind of puts it in the long-term perspective. The district's rates right now are kind of in the lower middle range compared to a lot of other regional agencies. That doesn't mean anything from my perspective. That's just informative because we see some agencies have high rates, but they're excellently run agencies. We see other agencies with low rates who probably aren't doing everything they should be doing. So it's hard to compare, one agency to another. What we see with the water uses here, about half the bills use 6 units per month, 600 cubic feet per month or less, and half use more throughout the year. So the median bill works out to be about $44.28 per month. This chart shows the rates kind of in a long-term historical perspective. This shows a bill for what I'll call an average user, which includes higher bills in the summer months as well. The average use is about 900 cubic feet per month, about 220 gallons per day. And if you could look back on the far left, the blue line shows what the monthly bill has been for the past 20-plus years. Thank you very much. And you can see, it's It's gone up over the years, but the compounded rate it's gone up is about 1.7%. Had the bills gone up at 3%, as that red line at the top, they'd be, a lot higher than they currently are. And the next chart shows the same long-term rate history for a customer with median use. That's at 6 units. It used to be 7 units, now it's down to 6 units. There, the average long-term rate increase, bill increase, has been about 1.2% over 20-plus years. So the district has had a commitment to keeping rates as low as possible, and I know that because we've worked on and off for the district for over 10 years, and it's always been a concern. Here's, some of the rate surveys for kind of the average bill compared to surrounding communities, and here's the median bill to compare to a number of surrounding communities. Again, some agencies are lower, some are higher. This is just for kind of background informative purposes. But really, I think the main reason why we're here tonight is that the district needs rate increases. The district's facing a number of financial challenges. Those were summarized in the notice that was sent out to everyone. I know there's been some, articles in the paper. There's been folks at the farmers markets and stuff trying to get the message out there. But this district has got a lot of aging infrastructure. They've got over 300 miles of pipelines, many of which have been in service for 50 to 70 to 80, 100 years, I would guess. I'm not sure, but very old pipelines. You've got a number of, I think it's about 11 booster pump stations that pump the water that's distributed throughout the system. Many of these booster stations are operating well past their normal useful life. You've got 17 water storage tanks. Many of them are old, aging, in need of reinvestment. So you've got a lot of old facilities. The district's known this for a bit, so it's been kind of a long-term goal to ramp up funding for some of these capital needs. But the district had an engineering assessment done of the system last year, and that led to a 30-year capital improvement program that identifies what should the district be spending? $2.5 million a year on its capital needs each year for the next 30 years to get the system back up to snuff and back in shape. Now, the proposed rates don't get you to that level of funding, but the goal is to take some significant steps in the right direction. On top of that, folks here know that they've got a water supply issue over the long term. You're in a high desert area that doesn't get a ton of natural rain recharge, yet you have a growing population that's sucking more and more water out of the aquifer each year, more than gets recharged. Now, it's not an immediate emergency, but over the long term, the water table's been dropping. The district was aggressive in working with Mojave Water Agency to get some grant funding, supplemented by some local funding, to be able to import water to help stabilize the basin over the long term. And the district's just very recently started to be able to bring some water in to help recharge the basin. So that's something else that over the long term the district's going to need to address is, increasing funding for imported water purchases to prevent further depletion of the groundwater basin. On top of that, there's some new regulations that have been rolling out in California regarding water quality. One of them is regarding chromium-6, which is a naturally occurring substance in a lot of groundwater out there. And the new regulations are temporarily on hold, but they take what were already some pretty stringent regulations and ratcheted them down to some very strict standards that the district's just not able to meet without additional treatment. So the cost of this could be in the $15 million range for facilities, plus, $500,000 to $750,000 a year for new operating costs just to deal with Chrome-6. This issue was initially part of the rate study, but the state had to put these on hold, these regulations, pending some additional study. So right now, these Chrome-6 costs are kind of outside the realm of our rate study and wouldn't appear till about 6 years down the line. The district had been working with the State Revolving Fund, State Water Resources Control Board, it's a State Revolving Fund loan program that also has grants, and had some initial indication they may be able to get some grant funding to help. This is what they were going after, but I think everything's being put on hold right now pending The state's not sure when the new regulations are going to kick in. So that's not included in this rate study at this phase, although we did include it in the long-term projections. And the other thing to point out is cost inflation. This district, like every district and everyone throughout the state and country, faces increasing costs each year, whether it's for healthcare or electricity or chemicals or insurance or staffing. So you need at least a few % rate increase each year just to tread water and keep in the same position. As we pointed out over the last 20 years, the rate increases here in the district have been less than the rate of inflation. So you've actually fallen behind over 20 years. I know there's been some, moderate steps to try to catch up over the last decade, but you're not there and you're facing these significant financial challenges. What we did was develop some financial projections. So we looked at different scenarios working with the district. The first one was what was called a best management practice. What if the district did everything it needed to do starting next year? Where would the rates need to go? And there were some pretty substantial rate increases, higher than what was sent out in the Prop 218 notices. To kind of balance, all these rate studies are kind of a balance of competing objectives. On one hand, you want to fund everything you need to fund. On the other hand, people don't like to raise rates. So there was a reduced rate scenario that was kind of called a phased approach. That is what was recommended and what was sent out to folks in the Prop 218s. And that's a series of rate increases that are substantial over the next 5 years that would support some substantial increased funding for capital needs, for meter replacements, for increased water imports. But they don't take you all the way there. They're just, big steps in the right direction. And the thing we wanted to point out is, again, these 5-year rates that have been proposed, they exclude some future things that may impact future rates, including chromium-6, which we just talked about. Number 2, the district's currently engaged with an independent contractor for an organizational assessment to take a third-party look at how the district's operating, identify if there are any potential cost-saving measures, or if the district actually has the adequate staff to handle what it's supposed to be doing. So that's going to be something that could affect future finances. And you've got some union negotiations coming up in the next couple of years. The next thing I wanted to point out, because this came out in a number of the prior conversations, and was the notion, hey, the district's got some fund reserves. You don't need to raise rates because you've got some fund reserves. And we know the district has fund reserves. They've accumulated some fund reserves to try to address some of the highest priority capital needs. And in all our financial scenarios, we assume these fund reserves are going to be drawn down to help fund the capital needs as the rate increases are being phased in. So the district, the goal is you're going to maintain a prudent minimum level of fund reserves over the long term, but no more than that. I hate to throw too many numbers up here because they're hard to see, but as I mentioned, the first scenario we looked at was the best management practice. What if the district really funded everything it should be funded? And that would look like rate increases, you can see in the yellow section there, of 40%, 30%, 20%, 10%, 5%. So pretty substantial rate increases that were higher than folks were comfortable with over the next 5 years. But that's what it would take to get you to be able to fund $2.5 million per year of capital needs, plus meter replacements, recharge water of 1,000 acre-feet per year, etc. So the next slide, we'll just roll on to, shows what is the reduced rate scenario. Again, these are significant rate increases, but a lot less than the best management practice, where the rates increase 18%, 16%, 14, 12, and 10. The percentages go down each year because they're compounding each year. So really in dollar terms, it's not that big of a difference from year to year with these rate increases. And what does that get you to? That gets you to about $1.5 million per year for capital needs and meter replacements, less than what's being recommended from the engineering study that's needed every year for the next 30 years. But it does also ramp in some funding for additional water purchases and some other ongoing needs that the district has. So substantial rate increases. No, these don't solve everything, but they're big steps in the right direction. These were meant to be kind of a compromise rate increase, understanding that, people want to do what do what's right for the district, at the same time balance that with the fact that they know that nobody wants rate increases. So it's kind of a middle-of-the-road approach, but even that we know no one's going to be happy with. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the water rate structure, make sure everyone understands what the recommendations are there. This slide here shows a summary of the current water rates, which include two components. There's a basic monthly fee shown on the top there. That's a fixed charge that's levied each month regardless of water use, and that helps the district recoup some of its fixed costs. So that charge varies by meter size. Customers with larger meters who put a lot more demand on the system pay a higher fixed charge in proportion to the higher capacity needs for serving that meter size. But almost all of your customers are at the smallest meter size, the 3/4 and 1-inch customer. The current rate's a little over $25 per month. These fixed charges currently generate 46% of the total rate revenues. In the last rate study, the target was that these were aiming to target 40% of total rate revenues, with 60% coming from the usage charges. Sorry to give you too much information, but what's happened is the water use has declined, so the usage charges are recouping less and less of the total revenues than was previously anticipated. So that's the fixed charge. In the bottom part of the slide, obviously folks know they pay for every unit of water that they use here in the district. Folks with the smallest meter sizes, which is mostly resident, almost all the residential and many of the commercial customers, pay according to a 4-tiered rate structure, where first they buy the first 5 units of water at $3 per unit, then the next 5 units at $3.50 per unit, and so on. So the rate gradually escalates as you buy more and more water, in reflection of the costs of providing service also increase for higher levels of use. The rates, as with most agencies in California, are expressed per 100 cubic feet. So the rate for the first tier is $3 per 100 cubic feet. But most people don't know what 100 cubic feet is. Turns out it equals 748 gallons. So if we were to take the district's water rates and put them in terms where people understand, the rates range from 40 cents per 100 gallons to 60 cents per 100 gallons. Average rate's about half a cent per gallon, which is a lot less than people would buy it if they have to go out and buy it in the store. So that's the rate that people pay for water 24/7 on demand here in the district. The other thing I forgot to mention was the larger meters. It's very difficult coming up with a fair system of tier for these customers. You've got very few of them. They can include everything from a school to a hospital to just a restaurant. So it's most common in California that these larger customers pay a uniform rate, and that uniform rate is equal to the weighted average rate of the other customers, to make sure that overall the smaller customers pay the same in towards the system on average as the larger customers. So there's equity there. This is a very sound rate structure that we think the district has. It's a pretty common rate structure in California. There's only some minor tweaks to the rate structure that are being recommended that came out of the whole process. One is to reduce the fixed charge recovery from, again, currently 46% to 40% of rate recovery. Not a huge change there. That's in line with the prior target as well. And that just means there'll be a little bit less increase to the fixed charges and a little more to the volumetric charges where people could control their bill. On the other side of the coin, with the water usage charges, the only change there is, keep the same rate structure, but the tiers are getting a little bit steepened over the next 4 years, which puts a little more conservation incentive to the rates, but at the same time also helps keep the rates a little bit lower for folks who are using the lowest levels of water use. Now, this means there'll be a little bit less impact to low users, a little more impact to high water users. For the folks in the middle, it's kind of a wash. And I'll point out that everyone benefits from the tiered rates, because even someone who's a high water user, they still have to buy the first 5 units in the first tier, and they would get the benefit of a little lower rates there than the next units in the next tier, and so on. So this slide here shows the proposed rates that were sent out in the Prop 218 notice. Again, there's the fixed charges on the top that would be ramping up over the next 5 years. Most customers would see fixed charges going from the current level of $25.78, ramping up in increments over the next 5 years to $41.35. The lower part of the chart shows the volumetric rates for the 4 tiers and then also for the larger commercial customers. Again, those are ramping up. Those are more than doubling over the next 5 years. And what that works out to be is the average water flow rate, the average quantity charge per unit, would increase from that current level of ½ cent to about 1 cent per gallon. So it's a big increase. We just want to put it in perspective. And that's what we try to do with these next couple of charts also, showing what the bill would be for an average user who used to use 10 units, who now uses 9 units. Again, you can see that blue line going across. There's been, small to minimal rate increases over the last 20 years, coupled with a much steeper climb over the next 5 years. But you put it in the long-term perspective, and it works out to be, over 25 years, rates going up at a little over 3%, about 3.8% per year. Again, no one likes that steep end of the curve there, but part of the reason why the rates have to go up more now is because they went up less in the past. That's what we usually find with rates. More now means less later. By the same token, less rate increases now mean more later. At the end of the day, the district's going to have to fund its needs one way or other if it's going to keep providing service. The next slide shows the long-term bills for a customer with the median level of use. Again, half the bills are below this level, half above this level. And again, you can see on the right side of the purple line there, it's a pretty significant ramp up over the next 5 years. But you look at it over the longer term, it equates to about a 3.3% rate increase, so a little bit higher than inflation over 25 plus years. And then the last slide shows the rates for a low user. There's a lot of folks in the district who are on fixed incomes who also have low levels of water use. So this is showing the bills for a customer who uses 3 units per month, which is about 75 gallons per day. They would see their bill go up from a current level of a little less than $35 to a little less than $60 spread out over the next 5 years. Again, that isn't a significant increase. Over the long term, it's about a 2.8% compounded increase. And just to kind of conclude, so we're just trying to put this in perspective. Again, really the whole point of our study was to try to work with the district and the Citizen Advisory Committee and the board over the last few months to come up with proposed rates that would move the district substantially in the right direction to where it needs to go to fund its long-term funding needs. Again, these rates don't take the district all the way where they need to go, but they are substantial steps in the right direction. The district is facing some substantial challenges, and we know nobody likes rate increases, and we've got a lot of folks on our Citizen Advisory Committee that are also on fixed incomes that don't like rate increases. But after kind of weighing all the options and what needs to be done and what the funding needs are, these are the recommendations that have been put forth to the board and are now up for consideration tonight. So we know nobody likes rate increases. I'm always the bearer of bad news for just about every agency I go to. But these are kind of necessary costs for supporting the district and its financial stewardship. And it's the financial stewardship that underlies the operations, the water supply, the capital infrastructure, everything the district needs to do. So maybe I'll leave it at that and turn it back over to the board.
Does the board have any questions for Alex?
No, not at this point.
Thanks, Alex. Any other staff participations?
I'm ready for D.
You ready for D? We are now going to open the public testimony, and I call the public testimony open. We don't have any numbers or anything, so we'll take you one at a time, and you have 3 minutes. And we'll start with Dr. Karen Tracy, who's chair of the...
She already opened the public hearing, right?
Good evening.
Welcome, Karen.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I should have
First
written
of
the
all,
time
welcome
down.
aboard.
Thank you.
Karen Tracy, ratepayer and chairperson of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I may be seen in the February 15th High Desert Star, co-author of the guest soapbox, defending the district for increasing rates. I applaud the board for following our recommendations. Sound and courageous judgment got us to this point. I strongly support your affirmative votes, taking this work to the field from our painstaking number crunching, many do-overs, projecting and calculating, plus long hours of committee and board meetings. All of this work was open to the public, and their input would have been welcome. After clean air, pure water is the most precious resource towards a healthy life. Nothing else even comes close. Our aquifer is a treasure which needs careful protection. Connected to the aquifer are a multitude of infrastructure improvements. The immensity and complex workings of a water district are staggering. In a tangential offering, I strongly recommend any ratepayers within the sound of my voice to take the complimentary district tour. For most of the years I had been volunteering here, we did not even have a capital improvement plan. A CIP from scratch is a vast undertaking. The project was tasked and admirably completed by Seth. Not long after completing the capital improvement program, Seth was hired away from Joshua Basin by, of course, a higher paycheck. Staff capable of this type of work are part of a complex working system that I just mentioned. They all must be appropriately compensated in order to retain them. I'm deeply grateful for our field and office staff and for board members with hearts and minds focused on doing this work. I stand here chastened and genuinely affected by the anger and fear I can feel caused by these rate increases. Anger and fear are generated, I believe, by what feels like threats to families and lifestyles. I'm in a position to understand and feel deeply threats coming from higher bills in a community designated disadvantaged. Some would say severely disadvantaged. I am one such disadvantaged ratepayer. I'm almost 70. I live on Social Security. I don't own a television. I live in a one-room cabin and I eat 1 meal a day. I'm fortunate that I'm able to teach yoga. I don't know how I will be able to pay for these increases. Still, I advocate strongly for rate increases as indicated. This is not a for-profit organization. I have watched for many years the passing of different policies and differing policymakers. This is the best board and the best path forward I have seen.
Thank you very much, Karen.
What's that tax water bill?
That
tax water bill that
form a line back there, so it'll make it go
used to
faster. Yes.
assess a tax based on
Just go over there and
funds
take a
of the
line.
disadvantaged community? Did you get, yeah, did you get a notice from ARPA today?
I don't know, because I didn't.
You're getting a big notice. Asking them about control. One of my clients was asked to donate $10,000.
Madam President, we could do it row by
We're
row
gonna fight the bill. ARPA is.
rather than have a,
Miss Tracy is opposed to the bill. I just want to let you know.
Madam President,
She likes the bill.
6 minutes for Michael.
Okay, Michael, you have 6 minutes.
For him.
Can you do that, Keith?
we'll just do 3 twice.
I was gonna, yeah, we'll do that.
Just give him 2 threes.
Why 6 minutes?
Okay,
Disability.
you can start.
Good idea.
My name is Michael McCourt. I'm a ratepayer, past board member. On the 15th of February, I sent an email to Susan Greer, requesting specific information for questions that I had that I feel are pertinent to this board to have answers to before a final vote. And I don't know what the reason is that I didn't receive a response. But one question I would have to President Luckman, is the Mojave Water Agency, that debt service. Did you take all that information into consideration in this rate study?
That's a question for Alex. I would presume that it's one of our regular bills, so I'm sure it was taken into consideration.
For the debt service to Mojave Water Agency,
Yes.
Of course.
On our tax bills?
you've got some on the tax bills, but you also, the district had a stream of payments that it had been paying to Mojave Water Agency also.
The answer is
that's
yes.
Phasing
Yes.
out, or phased out.
So yes.
So
That's phased out?
there is a chunk from the district's bills that just, I think it phases out over the next few years, I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
Oh, it's whenever the contract runs out, and that's 2022, 20,
Yeah.
something like that. I don't remember the exact
It
date.
should be 2021, but according to Kirby Brill, it would have been sooner than that based on the revenue that was generated and the revenue that was collected. When I was on the board, I discussed that with Kirby Brill, that the assessments on the tax bills were too high because of the assessed values on the property taxes. He concurred, and Mojave Water reduced those rates for the tax bills for several years. Since you're part of the Mojave Water Agency, I don't know your position, but I know you've been very involved, and I think you should have all the information if you're considering any of that in your rate study, because as the district pays 25% of that debt service, customers on tax bills pay 75%, then as soon as that debt is satisfied, where are the funds going to be applied to that you're currently collecting from the ratepayers?
I don't have the answer to that. We'd have to research it.
Can I'll just clarify that we did in the rate study, those payments to Mojave Water Agency go to zero by year 5. So that fund is freed up to help fund some of the other capital needs and other costs that the district has, but that is factored into the study, that those go to zero within 5 years.
Is that described in the
That's
study?
because the
Yeah.
pipeline is paid for at that point.
Right,
That's correct.
There was a bond on the pipeline, building the pipeline.
that's correct.
Yeah.
30-year bond.
Right.
Is that study public information? And can it be provided to anybody as a ratepayer?
Yeah, absolutely.
That has been,
Then why haven't I received a copy?
You didn't ask.
I asked you.
Last Thursday, I guess. I'm sorry, I've been busy. I
Last
didn't get to
Thursday,
it,
you've been
Michael.
busy. Well, you
I was out of
could
the
have,
office today.
you could have
you know.
at least responded with some sort of an answer. I'm not really prepared to professionally present because I don't have that information. All the questions that I had asked, that was one of my biggest questions. What all information did you take into consideration on funds that are collected through the ratepayers on their taxes or through their water bills to this district to take care of that debt service, and then once it's satisfied, where are those funds going to be applied? You already answered it well enough. You don't know. And you do, and I'd like a copy of it if I could.
Certainly, yeah. You can get through the
Yeah.
district, I think you've got a PDF version, they can probably,
Okay.
And my assumption would be that once the pipeline's paid off, that goes away. Goes
Then
off-
you'll know.
That's just what Alex said.
Goes off of your tax bill because it's paid.
It goes off the tax bill and it'll be paid, but the customers are being charged for the 25% that the district's currently paying.
that's going away.
It's going
That's the
away
way
too,
because
that's
it's
what
going
he
to be paid
said.
for.
So will the customers be charged, or will that charge go off?
Yeah,
You're
I
not
mean, that's,
charged now.
from my
Where
perspective,
does
There's no
your,
direct charge for that on your bill now.
where does your 25% come from?
Part of all of the rates, and we're saying now that will go away and that money will go in a different direction.
These
I mean,
proposed
the expense
rates-
goes away.
That's right. These proposed rates assume that there's no funding from the Mojave Water Agency for that debt service by the end of this rate period. So there's zero that's included in the rates by the time, by the end of 5 years.
I would like to see the rate study, and I'd also like the vote put off on this rate increase until all information is reviewed that may be coming up this evening.
Thank you very much.
And
And I think that that's your time, sir.
I approached under Americans with Disabilities Act. I did just come home from the hospital, and I apologize for not being better prepared, but I was expecting to receive the information. And that's not the only, I'm sorry. I'd like to know what reserve funds the district has at this time for
Unless
replacement.
Mr. Sauer says that I should give you more time, your time is up.
Let him speak. Got good questions.
Can we- can we-
I agree.
I'm a disabled combat veteran, and I just got
understand
home from the VA hospital, and I'm trying to do the best I can, but a lot of my time has been taken by responses from the district.
Michael,
Yes,
with permission of the board, I'd like to suggest that we try another 3 minutes
Okay?
and see where Michael is. And
We can do
another
that.
option is letting the other folks speak and then returning too. But take,
and I apologize to everyone.
Michael, take
Not
your
a
time.
problem.
Take your time.
I would like to know what board-approved projects currently have reserve funds for replacements. There were many projects that were approved and funded, and there was to be replacement funds put in place for those projects, such as the water radio read meters. I'd also asked what was the initial cost of those meters, because now it's being indicated at $2.5 million for replacement or something like that. Those meters were put in 15 years ago. I don't mean to take up any more time other than before the final vote, I would appreciate having a copy of that, and anybody else that needs a copy could have time to review it and come back to the board with further information that might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCord.
Excellent questions, I think.
Okay, who's next? Please state your name and your
right.
city residence.
Yes, hi, my name is Sandra
I can
Mullins.
just push that down, there you go.
Okay, my name is Sandra Mullins. I live in Joshua Tree, and as the lady Karen Tracy was saying, I'm also on limited income. I get a Social Security check, and that's it. And I was curious as to if there was going to be any type of help for seniors or low-income people, because like Southern California Edison, they have the CARE program. I also use HEAP, which is kind of, they're running out of money to do HEAP even, but I was wondering if possible, if there would be any type of things that you could put in effect for the low-income people to help them out with some of this money, if they apply for certain, income level.
Okay.
That was my suggestion.
Mr. Sauer, do you want to speak to that?
The short answer to that, and I'll get your phone number and call you, the short answer is the state legislature is currently considering a couple of different bills that would result in monies available for low-income folks throughout the state, Central Valley, well, throughout the state. And it's potentially going to be attached as a trailer bill in this year's legislature. and we may know more in the next year, depending on how quickly the legislature works. And as the laws are currently written, we cannot take ratepayers' money and help other people pay their bills.
Right.
But the Citizens Advisory Committee has even suggested that maybe the customers of Joshua Basin would consider some program like rounding up your bill so that the excess monies could go into some
Like a
sort of...
kitty or
Like a
something.
kitty.
Yeah.
And so that's a possibility. But right now, the way the laws are, we're prohibited from assisting low income, unlike Southern California Edison and a couple other utilities.
Private.
Okay, I just thought I'd mention it because when Karen Tracy was up speaking, I'm kind of almost the same like her, you know, I do without, I try to save the water, and I do all of that, and it's gonna strap my income already stretched tight. It's gonna be harder. So I just wanted to find out if that would be a possibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll give you a call.
Okay. Yeah, I did fill out a proposal, a paper. You know, they said if you want to bring one in, and I put my phone number on it.
Okay.
So you do have it. I gave it to the girl.
All right, thank
All
you.
right.
Okay, who's next?
Ed Valoran. I dispute some of the inputs that were used for these studies, and they were acknowledged at the last meeting. The numbers used for the meter replacement are greatly inflated. They should be half those numbers. If you crank out $250,000, half of it per each of those years, you drop the overall rate by 10%, because $250,000 is 10% of that amount. Also, this organization, part of the terminology, is run by bean counters, not the people in the back, not the people with the licenses that are required. It goes from D1 to D5 or from T1 to T5, and I don't see the licensed people here at all. I'm sorry, you've got experience, but you're supposed to have, in my understanding, you're supposed to have state certification. This organization spent almost $500,000 more, and it wasn't out there with the guys working in the field maintaining all these great miles you tell us about. It's the people keeping track of the workers. I believe that the rate study, one of the first things that should have been done was look at the manpower, because this manpower is costing $500,000 more than 29 pounds, and 29 pounds has got 1.5 times the number of customers. I see this as a flaw, not the person doing the study. I see the flaws being the inputs that were used in it. These numbers should be lower. They should be changed and reflected with the true new meter cost for 3/4-inch meters, which is adequate to handle the new requirements of the fire suppression sprinkler system in a house. That would greatly reduce the cost if you used it accordingly. So I ask this board to, if you do approve it, because we probably don't have the complaints, that you do not use the maximum numbers, you use numbers that's at least 10% less than these numbers for each individual year. Subtract that $250,000 out, you'll see the sum of the total on years 2 through 4 are about $2.5 million. So if you subtract $250,000 for each one, that's 10%, and reduce the size of the increase. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Tom Marquez, Suncare Community. First off, I'm going to read the protest letter that was submitted to the district after I make this initial statement. People have been saying from the Citizens Advisory Committee that Mr. Ed was saying that comparisons of apples and oranges. Well, it's really not that. It's apples and apples and oranges and oranges. But I'd like to reiterate the comment that was made by the person that the rate study is being conducted by. He said that the standby fees is just a little bit of the income of the water district. Well, back in 2013 and 2014, the district collected 2012. Standby revenue for the current year was $1,165,000. That's just not a few dollars. So the district is collecting quite a bit of money on property taxes for the infrastructure. And back in 2008, when I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee, which I resigned in 2011 because of the Citizens Advisory Committee was too close to the Board of Directors, which they were appointed by the Board of Directors, as I was. And like I said, I resigned because I couldn't take all the stuff that was going on, that they weren't representative of the community. Other than saying that, people have asked me, it says, well, you don't know what you're saying. You don't have the correct information. Well, all the information I get is from the district. And case in point, about well 14. Originally, it was supposed to be cost less than $200,000 to refurbish it. At this point in time, the Board of Directors has allotted approximately $800,000 to refurbish it. And I don't even know if it's going to get online with that $800,000. I'm just going to read the rate increase study, which is I am against, and I'm not against a rate increase of maybe 8 or 9%, but not the percentage that they're talking about. But they're talking about the increases for a 3/4 inch meter in 2018 will go up 4.57%. I won't give the points. 13% the following year, 12% the next year, 10% the following year, and the last year would be 8%. And the charge of water usage on Tier 2, which is the average, for 2018 is going to go up 25%, 19, 20%, 21 and 16%, and in 22 it'll go up 10%. So that is the reason that I'm against this rate increase. And if the district would I'll close it right now. If the district Board of Directors would really think about it and have a discussion about it, which they haven't had so far, they would come down with a single-digit increase instead of a double-digit increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markowitz.
Hi, my name is Chris Clark. I'm a resident of Joshua Tree. I want to speak in favor of the recommended increase. I recognize that it's going to be a bitter pill for a lot of folks to swallow. I'm not all that comfortable with that much addition to my monthly budget myself, which I expect will be added to my rent fairly shortly after the increases go through each year. But I was also not comfortable with the money that I had to shell out as a result of interruptions in water service over the last couple of years, putting house guests up in unanticipatedly in hotels when they'd come to stay with me at my house, and I suddenly couldn't guarantee them showers or running water or things like that. I wasn't really comfortable with my landlady having to shell out repairs because of the pressure surges after the water outages when they knocked caliche loose in the water heater and had to have a plumber come out and mine the thing. I think that there is such a thing as false economy. I had a girlfriend once who insisted on buying the little things of soap and mouthwash and toothpaste and things like that because they were cheaper, even though we were going to run out much sooner and have to pay that same inflated price over again. I want to pay for what we need. There are things I'd much rather do with this money, but I would also much rather have the water when we need it, have less chromium-6 so I don't have to spend it on chemotherapy 20 years down the road. I absolutely support the recommended increase, and I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Luke Sabala, ratepayer. If this is a cost of doing service or getting water delivered to my house, I support the increase, but with an air of reluctance. I don't really want to pay more for anything, not water or gas or electricity, but I think it's a modest increase, and I do support it. My concern is for the people on a fixed income that might be in financial dire straits, and I would support rounding up my bill. to help cover that. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. We've got a traffic cop out there that, is there anyone else out there? You've done everyone outside? Okay. If there's anyone here who wishes to
You need to sign up. I don't know, are you giving up here? Do you need to sign up?
We're ready. We're just saying we're ready.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. I'm in favor of the rate increase because I'm sorry, Gail Austin, Joshua Tree ratepayer. I am in favor of the rate increase because I want us and future generations to have the best water and water service possible. In the past, the district didn't charge enough to keep the infrastructure in perfect condition or even good condition. They just kept the rates low and let the infrastructure deteriorate. I'm not blaming them. Now we're in a position where we have to raise the rates to an extreme level. We can't do anything about what brought us to this point. We can't place blame, but we can move forward having learned an important lesson. I've taken the water tour and attended board meetings, and I just became a member of the CAC. I am not friends with any board members or staff. I don't like the fact that our water bills are going to increase, but I prefer it to the alternative. The district's infrastructure failing and putting our community into an emergency situation. I believe that most of us that live here wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Living here is worth more than money to me, so we will trim our budget elsewhere to pay for our higher water bills. We've been challenged in the past to pay our water bill, especially when our neighbor left our hose running for over 24 hours. A $500 water bill was not in our budget. My husband and I both work 2 jobs, and sometimes he works 3. I know that some in our community don't have the opportunity to increase their income. For those on fixed or low income, there is no place to trim their budget. They need help to pay their water bills, and we need to find a way to do that. I looked into that California will eventually come up with something. If anyone, I can get you maybe help with paying your electric, and that money could go to the water. I want to be involved in the roundup, but that's definitely a problem. The district isn't requesting this rate hike to line their pockets or to gouge their customers. They're doing it to ensure that we never get behind again. We have the pleasure of living here, and we must take on the role of water protectors. If that role includes paying more for water than people who live elsewhere, then we should be happy to do it. We need to replace a lot of pipe, meters, and replace water in our aquifers. I intend to stay involved with the water district and do my best to hold them accountable. I would encourage everyone else to do the same. I hope that Sam and Al stay involved because they can share information with me about the infrastructure and ways to save money. This rate hike is a maximum hike, not a minimum. So if the district can save money on projects, they can pass that savings on to us by voting to drop the rate hike percentage in any given year. So once all the pipes and meters are replaced, they will have an ongoing budget task of making sure to save towards replacement in the future. I applaud the board and the staff on their efforts so far to be transparent and to keep the public informed about what they are doing with the money we pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Hi, I'm Peggy Kennedy and I live in Joshua Tree. I don't believe that anybody wants to see a rate hike on their water bill, but if you look at why we need one, we might change our minds. I do believe people agree that we are water custodians for our generation and the generations to come. Guaranteeing clean drinking water for the future is one of the reasons I believe we do need a rate hike. For the past 20 years, we've lost water from our aquifer. The level gets lower and lower, and, pretty much we just ignore it, which I consider selfish for, us and future generations. If we continue to drain the aquifer, the water's going to be gone. And if we can't buy any water at that point, it's going to be way more expensive than it is now. So to me, it makes sense to raise the rates and use some of that money to replenish the aquifer. If we can bring it to the level that it was 20 years ago, future generations can enjoy the same water that we do. Everything costs money, and we get what we pay for. I think we should pay what we have to fix this problem instead of passing it on to our children. It has been passed on to us, and now we're trying to come up with a way to solve it, which is buying possibly more water from the Mojave Water Agency. That option might not be available in the future, so I urge the board to vote for the water rate hikes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, it's okay.
Hi, I'm John Stang again. Back in January 5th, when I received a letter and regarding the rate hikes that were going to be proposed, I did some calculating on my bill, and I was furious. And I went on a campaign trying to get all the no votes I could to get this turned around. The board has a copy of this paper I made on my regarding my bill for January of 2017. And I took that bill, I watered 12 trees. I've been watering them for 15 years, trying to get them established. So I'm in Tier 4. A family of 4 is going to be in Tier 4 without watering anything. With the numbers that was given, $6 increases of $6.20 in Tier 1. If, by the way, the basic fee is going up 60%. We used a number that I added up that came to 70%. I don't know where it comes from because the basic fee is in itself is going up 60% to $41.35. Tier 1 going up to $6.20. Tier 2 going up to $7.70. Tier 3 up to $9.20. Tier 4 up to $10.70. That takes my water bill to $277. It was $129 in 2017. That is a 138% increase. That is ridiculous. Also, I put a letter into the paper last week into the opinion column regarding this bar graph that they paid for. They should not have used CSA, County Service Districts, in this study. It does not fit.
Sir, your time is up.
Okay. It does not fit the economy of Joshua Tree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Well, good evening. My name is Tom Austin, and I appreciate the board letting us have some time to speak. I'm sorry to hear all the anger and angst, careful here, big boy, that we have around here. It's just merely an obstacle that we've got to overcome. I'm looking forward to seeing a rate increase because then I know something's to be done about my water infrastructure. Meters, check. Everybody's talked about those. Pipes, check. They're old. Wait a minute, 70 years old? They're almost as old as Kurt. So, Propose the increase? Yeah. I notice each year I look at my dish statement. It seems to go up $5-10 each year. It just does, but it's a luxury item. We don't think about it. Water is life. I'm not going to quibble about the pennies. We came in here in 2012 to build a business, and in 2014 or 15, I think it was, I asked for a flow test because the fire department required it for a new commercial build. I was told by the water district, we cannot do a flow test because it might sustain damage to our infrastructure. And I'm thinking, okay, do you want to find out now if it works or wait till an emergency? Anyway, the district and the county fire marshal's office hammered it out and we were successful. So I do appreciate that. My other common analogy is, how many of you have seen blue tarps on roofs? Because someone's got a hole in the roof, they put a blue tarp on it? How many blue tarps do you keep putting up there with tires to hold it down? Or do you fix the damn thing? Yes, it's going to cost us money. We're going to have to pay up. Water is life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else out there?
What business are you on? Do you know? Do you know what business he owns?
Hi, I'm Karen Morton. I'm a Joshua Tree resident, and I'm also a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee. And this is actually my second rate study since I've been on the committee. I am, too, on a limited, modest income, and I'm not in favor of paying more, but it just, with all the information that we were given, I feel that we made the best decision that we could, and we did take into consideration all of everyone else that, just our demographics. And so I am in favor of the increase, even though it will hurt our pocketbooks a little bit more. But out here in the desert, we are forever in a drought, unless we get so much rain and our aquifer replenishes itself. We aren't replenishing it, and I'm concerned about water for my grandchildren, as I hope every one of you are too. I feel confident in the data that was provided, and I absolutely question anything that has been proposed publicly to disagree with anything that I've been given. And so I am a user, a consumer. I have the guilty pleasure of having a pool and a spa, and when I have to fill those up, it's going to cost me more money. But that's the price, that's just a consequence of having that opportunity. Where the pocketbooks that are going to be hurt the worst are the people that do consume the most. And I would like to recommend anybody that has Airbnbs that you put up a little notice and say, this is a desert. Please conserve our water. Let's see, I know I've got something else, but I think I hit on the important part, so I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Hi, my name is Beverly Newton and live in Joshua Tree. And I believe the rates are excessive. I think that there should be some modification to them. I don't believe that all meters need to be changed. My question is to you, when you have a TV, you buy a TV, and do you have it 2 years and then go out and replace it? Or do you wait until you start having some problems with it? Maybe we can, take care of the problems as they come along and decrease the price. We're on a limited budget. I work for a nonprofit, and I try to do some odd jobs to make ends meet. So the rate increases really affect our family. I know that my salary will not go up and match the rate increases that are going on. I want to know, what is your proposal after these 3 years? It's a substantial increase, but what after that? Maybe we can do some modification and continue.
Thank you, Beverly.
Is there
Anyone
anybody
else?
else that can hear? Just, Go ahead and stand by.
Elena Android, Joshua Tree. I don't mind a little bit of a rate increase. I think they're excessive too over the 5 years. But I'm looking at this from I just wanted to bring up a different perspective. I would hope and I would say expect and desire a promise that from the administrative side of what is being spent, that would be reduced as well, that you would make a strong effort, in the office with your paperwork, with things that could be cut out of what you're spending. I looked today online, and I was a little surprised to see that in the month of January, you paid out $250,000 for everything. I think that's how I read it. And there's a lot, I'm like, whoa, what is that for? What is that? 14,000 for that, 17,000 for that. There's things that can be cut out of that end of the budget as well to make up some of the monies that you need for this project. I know that you mentioned something about the flyers, Susan Greer and somebody else, $23,000 a year that could save by not, you can have a recorded message of that information, you can post it, you can do emails, there's ways around spending money in the office. So that would be I know this gentleman mentioned that rate increases are the kind of financial underpinning, but it's also what you can save administratively, and I would encourage you to tighten the belt there as well. Thank you.
Elena, your last name, please?
Anjoy.
Anjoy?
A-N-G-I-O-I.
Anyone else?
My name is Jeff Bruce. I'm a new resident in town. I've been here 2 months. Great town. I like this place. I see good weather, varies every day, beautiful scenery. I don't have any idea, because I'm a newcomer, what the actual numbers should be, even though I'm moderately good with numbers. When I was in Los Angeles, where I lived for 75 years, the last couple, 3 years, I spent a fair amount of time on the Citizens Board that monitored our Department of Water and Power, which was hated, and legitimately so. I can't talk about specific numbers, but I can talk about certain things that have to do with the relationship between the customers and the board and the people who actually do the internal work at a Department of Water. I'm hearing what is shocking to somebody from Los Angeles, that there has been no budgeting to amortize, to repair the things that you know are going to die, like pipes. There's been no budgeting for that? There's nothing? Isn't that typical, that if you own a commercial building, aren't you setting aside some money for a new roof occasionally? If you run a company and you have pensions to pay, aren't you setting aside money before the people retire, or do you wait until they retire and then come up with the money? That's crazy. But if that has been, whether that has been done or not, you can determine not to do it in the future. And everybody's got to pay for it now. That's just the way it is. How much you pay, I have no idea what the right numbers are. I don't know how this city compares to 29 Palms. I don't know what the problems are. I doubt that the statistics are meaningful in the comparison.
But whatever the problem is, in the future, for Pete's sakes, you have to budget. I can tell you that the mess in Los Angeles with our pipes is catastrophic. We have explosions in streets on high-pressure lines. Those are very costly. That costs a hell of a lot more than replacement to fix them. Most of our pipes were rated at 70 to 85 years in lifetime. That would mean you put in 1% of the cost of replacement every year or something like that as part of your budget. You just do it. I would like to suggest that the bill, starting next month, have a checkbox in it for anybody who's willing to round up his bill and just pay it, and then figure out how to make a way so that people can volunteer. I'll pledge to pay an extra $2 a month over and above my bill if you'll put it on the bill, and I'll do that in perpetuity. I think many of us can afford to do that, and we should. And so,
Thank you very
please
much.
amortize out the costs.
Thank you.
My name is Johnny Painter. I live up in Copper Mountain, Basin, and Joshua Tree. I've lived in the area just a little over 2.5 years, and starting last summer, I decided I needed to get more involved in what was going on, and I chose the Joshua Basin Water District as kind of my focus. And I started going to board meetings. I started going to the CAC meetings. I went on the district tour. I've learned a lot, and one of the things that I'd like to say about the comments that I've heard from the public tonight is, in those meetings that I went to, and I have to confess that I've missed the last couple of months, but in the meetings that I went to, one of the common concerns that I heard in a kind of an informal way from the board members and the people who were officiating at the meeting is, why aren't more people from the public at these meetings? I've heard people talk tonight about information that they didn't have, or information that they couldn't get, or information that they didn't understand. And one of the things that I've learned in the process of participating at these meetings is they're open to the public. Anyone can walk in and do it. And you get to sit down, you get to listen to what they're talking about, you get to ask questions. Nothing that is involved in this rate study is new to me. Even though I've missed the last 3 months, I've heard it all. And I would like to also emphasize that, yes, you know what, I think we probably didn't put enough money away in the past, and it's time to pay the piper. Because if we don't take care of it now, it's only going to get worse in the future. I'm on a fixed income myself, I'm retired, but I have witnessed some incredibly dedicated people working on this problem. And from my experience, the best possible efforts are being made to make sure that we have that they were using the very best information that they could get. It's unfortunate that our rates have to go up, but if we don't do it now, it's only going to get worse later. So I encourage the board to approve this measure. I have a great deal of sympathy for people who have even less income than I do. I can afford it. I understand that a lot of people can, and I sincerely hope the legislature is able to address those issues and help those people out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One minute?
Yes.
Okay.
She remembered.
Yeah. That last thing. Karen Morton again. Yes. Thank you, Alex, for being here tonight. You presented all the information that we've been digesting over the last several months very succinctly. And the other thing is, I wanted to say is about the rounding, what we're calling the rounding up. I want to take my 15 minutes of fame and just take credit for that. I think I threw that idea out quite a while back. And I'm really, really excited that there's a lot of people that are for it. And I don't know what the logistics are going to be through Pimentas and how we do all that, but that would be really cool. to do that. So I'm,
Thank you, Karen.
Hi, Carl Parmley, Joshua Tree resident, ratepayer. I was actually curious, sorry, got distracted there. I know that some grants were applied for and one for the chromium-6 issue that we've been dealing with for a while now. With this expected infrastructure issue, and apparently you guys have been talking about it for a while, I didn't notice in the budget last year whether there were any grants that were written to maybe help out the community with its infrastructure problems. Is there any way to know whether or not any grants were applied for? It's a low-income community. You know, the average median household income here is $37,000 a year, and we're talking about, you know, doubling the rates to some of the highest in the state. With such a low-income community that's actually dropped by 2% in the last 2 years from what it used to be, we've been hit pretty hard. And like I said, I saw some stuff about the chromium-6. I didn't see anything about grants written for these infrastructure upgrades that it does seem that we need. Were there any grants applied for?
There are grants being applied for.
If those grants are won, will that change the rates? The rate increase plan? I mean, because a modest rate increase is absolutely understandable, you know, but we're talking about a huge rate increase. And I mean, if these grants that are applied for, if they're won, is that going to be able to decrease these expected hikes?
It would be up, if I may,
Yes, sir.
it would be up to the board, but yes, if our costs can be decreased significantly by grants, then each year the maximum increase could be less as approved by the board.
Okay.
And we also have, not only for infrastructure, but we're working on a feasibility study for potential solar. And if that works out, it could decrease our cost for electricity by some $326,000 or so each year. So all of those things will be factored in to the board's decision each year to what the rate increase would be. This is not a fixed rate of every year. The board can't go higher than that. But if we find more revenue through grants or low-interest loans, whatever the board decides to do, they will take all that into consideration. And I happen to be sitting next to an expert grant writer.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Do we have any expected time when we could, you know, estimate that we'll hear back on whether or not these grants?
Not yet.
But when were they written, just out of curiosity?
About the first two were written about 9 months ago.
About 9 months ago. So hopefully soon then.
Not counting chromium-6.
Understood. Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
1 minute. I'd just like to say that there are very few grants, though, for basic infrastructure. There are some, but that's not what you get grants for.
Small amounts usually.
Josh is right there. How are you doing?
Good to see you. Okay, 1 minute. Can you get it down to one? Well, we'll tell you when you've gone down to one. Go ahead.
Okay, like I said, at the last meeting, we saw the price of meters go way down when he got with 29 Palms and the general manager came here at the last meeting. The estimate on meters was based upon $400, and Kurt himself said $130, and 29 Palms is even cheaper. And for this gentleman, the comparison, 29 Palms, general manager and their operations chief have a D5, the highest distribution license you can get, certification in the state, and a T3 license. That's why they are so much more efficient, even though they got 50% more meters. That's why they can operate. Their finance department costs $200,000 less than this one does. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else?
One more.
One more.
Right.
Are you prepared to tabulate the
I've listened to
disconnect?
everybody, and I appreciate what you're saying about increased rates and approvals and such. All of this has been promised in the past. Reserve funds have been set up, and I don't believe that they exist today for certain projects. One question I didn't hear anybody address is the national park. And I'd like to know what their meter fee is and what their water rate is. There's over 2 million people that come to Joshua Tree each year to go into that park. And it's also has an effect in town with the Airbnbs and the commercial projects around here. I'm not against any of that. It's just that I think everybody should pay a fair share. And if we're being asked to pay an increased amount, I think it should be as equal as possible for everybody concerned. What impact would that really have with the national park? The water consumption, I don't know, because I haven't received any of that information, but I think it's a good question to ask because it has a major effect on our aquifer, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Briefly, I just want to say, since I have the audience here, we do have spaces on our grant-provided tours tomorrow and next Tuesday, so see me before you walk out the door if you're still interested in attending.
Thank you very much.
I'll make one more statement.
One statement.
1 minute.
Less than a minute.
John, one thing I found interesting, when they voted to got a grant to put the water line in, it cost the district $3,000. They had it in by 2016. That's when they hired this gentleman to start doing the study because they're broke.
No one said we're broke.
Oh, don't take the bait.
All right, is there anyone else? Seeing none, I am declaring the public testimony hearing closed. All right, do we need to,
It's time to tabulate, now that you've closed the public hearing, Madam Chairman, it's time to tabulate the protest. I'm asking Susan, are you prepared to do that, or do you need a recess?
No, we don't need a recess.
okay.
We had 25 protests received before the meeting, and we've received another 38 protests tonight at the meeting for a total of 63 protests.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I want you to know that we are in much better shape than when I first started on this board. We do have a capital improvement program plan, which we did, I couldn't believe it when Kurt brought that in, and that we had not had that for all of these years. We had no plan for what needed to be done and when, and
How much?
it's unbelievable. So you can thank Mr. Sauer for really putting this district on its feet and getting a lot of things done that haven't been done before.
Thank you, but you can thank the staff.
I'm thanking the staff through you.
May I comment? The action item that it's contemplated next,
Yes, sir.
it'll be twofold. It will accept water and wells for filing the rate study report, and you can consider adoption of the resolution that adopts the rates that have been discussed tonight.
Okay.
Twofold motion.
There are two, okay. So is there any questions from the board before we go on?
I don't have any,
What kind of questions? Or can we just ask anything we want now?
No? You can ask something about the rates if you want to ask Alex something or make a comment.
Well, we're hearing a lot about, the different people's different incomes, different tiers and all that kind of stuff. And my opinion was that, based on reading through some of this stuff, is that the tier system is a way of accommodating people that have a lower income. In other words, people with a lower income are going to use less water, so that puts them in that first tier. And so they pay a lower rate. And along those lines, with doing something considerate of lower income people, was Al Painter, Johnny Painter, I'm sorry, he mentioned this some time ago about being willing to do something for the people that are income challenged, so to speak. And so my thought was that this 60/40 thing where 40% is the basic rate, is funded by the basic rate, but 60% of our budget is funded by water consumption. So therefore, the people that pay, or that use more water, are going to pay more of our bills. They're going to pay more of our bills. And then, I was looking at this, one of these pages is quite overpowering. It was page 33, 55 of 80. Am I out of light on any of this, Madam Chairman? No, not yet. We get, it looks like, Susan, $473,000 as an allotment from the county, from property taxes, every year. And when I look at, on this page here, this was on the web, by the way, if nobody's seen this report from Alex, there's an area for less application of discretionary revenues, it says here. And it looks to me like we're allotting from our money from the county, we're allotting $185,000 to defray some of the costs in Tier 1, and then another $35,000 for people in Tier 2. Am I reading that right?
That sounds correct. Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but that sounds correct. A portion of those property taxes are helping to keep the Tier 1 rates
And partially the Tier 2, which between the two of them, that's $220,000 that we possibly could have used someplace else in our budgetary spectrum, but we've chosen to use it to help out people that are in Tier 1 and people that are in Tier 2, which is actually everybody that uses water, but particularly it helps people, that are at a lower income. I'm just kind of curious, have we been doing that all along, or is this a new thing?
There's different ways of like justifying tiers, but I mean, you have 4 tiers right now with the first tier is the lowest rate and it keeps stepping up.
Yeah.
So in concept, you have something very similar to that already.
So my point is that in my judgment, we have not ignored people that are in the lower income. Am I talking loud enough, John? Can you hear me? We have not ignored people that are in these lower income groups. We've done these 3 things, and tier systems, as far as I know, are under challenge. People don't think they're fair to everybody because you end up having certain people paying the bills for other people or some such thing. But we're doing these 3 things that seem to be helpful for all the ratepayers. Thank you, Madam President.
Just a comment. First, I wanted to say that I'm very proud of this community tonight, for everyone being here and speaking your opinion, lending your voice to this discussion, whether you support the rate increases tonight or not. It's really important that we all participate in this community and make these decisions as a community together. So thank you for being here tonight. And then second, I did want to reiterate a point that Ms. Austin made and General Manager Sauer made, that in the event that we pass this rate increase tonight as proposed, if we find other sources of revenue or cost savings, we do have the discretion not to raise the rates as much. And we are already working on that. The staff and the board are, and Kurt mentioned we just received a free planning grant from the state of California that we found was available to us to study the potential to generate our own energy and also to find greater energy efficiency, which potentially could save us a couple $2 million over the next 20 years. We'll find out how much when this grant feasibility study is completed. Also, General Manager Sauer, based on the input of the public, did talk to the 29 Palms folks about the water meters, and we may be able to get the water meters at a reduced price. We appreciate your input. And so, and then also we do have the potential to get additional grants. Like President Luckman said, there aren't a lot available for infrastructure, but there are grant opportunities out there. We're also looking at potentially replacing our pipes by hiring our own crew. High Desert did that, and they're saving money over contracting out that work. So I just want to let you all know that we are diligently working to try to not raise the rates as much going forward. But that being said, President Luckman mentioned our capital improvement plan. I'd really encourage you to take a look at that document. I believe it's available on our website. And over 30 years, we need to spend $2.5 million a year just to get our infrastructure back into good shape. And if you looked at some maps that were produced by staff for Director Flynn of all the leaks that we've had in the last 2 years, they're growing almost exponentially. So we really have to address this problem. It's very painful to think about affecting any of you, and especially folks on limited incomes, with a steep rate increase, but we have to start tackling this problem. We can't keep kicking the can down the road and have the problem become more acute in the future. So lastly, I just wanted to say that we are tracking the legislation concerning helping to provide people on low and fixed income with assistance. And I think as a district, we're going to do everything we can in our small way to support that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnson.
Question for Alex. Alex, on the proposed resolution with the resolve, does this mean that should we approve raising the rates, that they are the rates that are quoted here for the first 5, 10 years, whatever, or are the rates flexible as we approve the resolution?
Typically, the rates that are in the resolution are the rates that would be adopted and on the books. That said, they are subject to review, and you could always implement something lower than them each year. And in fact, the district has done that in the past. We did a rate study, maybe it's like 7, 8 years ago, and it recommended some rate increases, but the board, instead of implementing in this plan, they ended up implementing half the rate increases some years and spreading it out over a longer term.
And when can that
Always do
happen?
that.
When can that happen?
Any day, if you could say, hey, we're going to cut the rates down to free, I
So
mean,
does-
whatever you want to do.
Does that take a board?
Yes. I would suggest yes, but, yeah, we can take a board vote to reduce the rate, to change it.
78 of 80.
Or it could be a making up in year 3. Let's say the rate says it's going to, whatever, $7 a unit, the board could say, hey, we're going to cut that back to $6.50 and only go to $6.50 this year, something like that. So you do have some flexibility to do that as well.
But as it stands tonight, we're looking at an 18% increase year 1.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to say that, I've sort of done my own little canvassing, and I think that there is, without a doubt, almost unanimous decision by most of the ratepayers that rate increases are long overdue, and most of the folks are not objecting to paying the rate. However, the rate quoted is the issue. So I think that, that certainly is going to reflect on how I would vote on this. I think there's some solutions and some compromise. I have been an advocate for the low-income, no-income folks forever and a day, have been monitoring all of this. I think we're doing what we can. I think there's going to be an impact to those folks. And I think it's a pipe dream to think that the tier solution here for the upper-tiered folks is going to meet and balance out the budget, especially when we're looking at a 10% immediate reduction on those folks once they get their first bill with that, according to your paperwork. We've already lost, I think, 20% of our revenues this year because of the conservation fact, which equates to about $200,000 immediately. So you're going to compound that then with further conservation measures. I really don't see how the numbers are going to work. And as most of you know, I've been sitting on the Finance Committee for, seems my whole world, plus the CAC and a private citizen here for over 25 years. So that being said, I think there might be a workaround. Am I tracking, or are you tracking?
Yeah, I just want to say we did factor in that, you know, as rates increase, people tend to cut back water use, and there may be more conservation efforts underway statewide, depending on, or locally, depending on what happens. But folks here have cut back in recent years, and we did factor into our study some additional future conservation. And not only, we didn't assume it was across the board, we assumed if there was cutback, there's going to be more cutback in Tier 4, where people can cut back, than in Tier 1, where there's a lot less ability to cut back. So we did factor that in, but it's never a perfect science. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen with your water use next year, 5 years down the line. But we did try to factor that into.
No, understood. And you've done a great job with this, and we're all, you know, beholden to you for the expertise and the boards. This has been agonizing for all of us up here. The other part of my thinking on this is I'm not sure what measure there is for accountability on the expenditures of the revenues. We talk about the CIP and has given numbers in there, but as we know from an accounting perspective here, it's like a peanut and shell game. When something happens, you move that. They're not designated line items with mandated holds on those funds. So my fear is that we'll get into another situation here where once again, and I don't know who made the comment about we hadn't set a budget up, we have had projected projects that have not been funded. That's basically what happened. They went to staff, they went to some other projects or whatever. So in defense of not having some pre-planning with that, there has been budgeted monies, but they've been moved around. So with that being said, I appreciate everything. It's just I have some concerns too. I think the rate is considerably steep just starting off. I'm not quite sure that there couldn't be a flat leveled sort of measure that would basically take this out same and end up with the same results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, in dollar terms, it is pretty flat from year to year. You know, just as a higher percentage the first year because it's a lower base rate. And also you need to get your funding up sooner rather than later. But when you look at the dollar impacts for typical bills, it's pretty consistent in dollar terms from year to year. Maybe a little higher some years than others, but the percentage is a little bit misleading.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I think, you know, we keep talking about the revenues that are supposed to be here, how we're going to actually apply those and not apply them, and then we're talking about, you know, holding some back. So, once again, from an accounting perspective, I don't see a line item here that says this is where you're going to put these funds, and X is what you can spend, and no mas. No more.
I think that could happen
What's the
during...
first word?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I
the board
suggest
does that.
that that's something you could address during your budgeting process.
Finance committee.
Well, we don't want to go...
Riveting.
They are riveting, I'll tell you, you get more of this every time you come about. So I scared Rebecca away already, so there it is.
I'm coming back, I'm coming back. I want to invite Elena, I think she would love the finance committees. March 12th, 14th?
All right.
This knowledgeable guy here has a statement related to that.
Let the board finish theirs, unless it's a question.
A question. I think what I heard is that the board sets a budget, but does not have to follow the budget according to the bylaws of the board.
Right.
Well, it's just...
So isn't the question, if you're not following the budget, to change the bylaws?
Well, I'm not sure.
No, that's not true.
Unless you want flexibility, right?
Yeah, the budget is a management tool.
Tool.
It's not, there's no ceiling on it mandated by law. It's purely within the discretion of this governing body.
That's true. I'm not making a legal case out of it. I'm just making a common sense case out of it. Wouldn't the problem is not solved by anything except stipulating that if you make a budget, the board has to follow the budget or make a public announcement that it's not going to.
Well, management is accountable for following the budget. If there's a great disparity, the questions would come to our general manager. But to put a cap on it would be very restrictive. I think that, it's out of my field, but it seems, I've never seen it. It'd be too restrictive on the proper management of this district. But he's guided by the budget, and anytime it exceeds the budget matter, I have to assume there's going to be some accountability.
Yeah, if it comes over a certain amount, it comes to us. Director Unger.
Well, Bobby, you still going?
No, I'm sorry.
Sounds
Oh,
like-
I could keep going.
No.
Sounds like you want to spend some more money on a new rate study.
No, we have an organizational study that's actually going to tell us in March, next month, what we are spending and what we aren't, and maybe we'll find some cutbacks.
And we
but
will be working on that
if we-
budget.
If we propose this, then we'll have to come back and say, please reduce the rates.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know people don't always come to the meetings. I always joke that people would rather chew their foot off than be trapped in a municipal meeting. I'm usually part of the angry mob myself at some community meetings, so thank everybody for coming out. And it doesn't matter if you haven't been here, we have talked about these things. These have been huge concerns to us. Rate increases aren't popular, and they're not politically popular. They've been put off. And there's a really great book called Death of a Water District. It's a true story. And I chose one little passage that I wanted to share with everybody. In fact, it's really funny because the part I chose actually reflected what someone else here made a little anecdote about a false economy, a little travel size and everything. And they're talking about this real water district. Like most public water districts in California, the Forest Hill Public Utility District is controlled by a board of 5 publicly elected residents from the community. No experience is required to be on the board, no qualifications are needed. As long as a person receives a majority of the votes in the election, they have a job on the board. Your prom kings and queens right here. As happens in many water districts, some board candidates run unopposed. Simply placing one's name on the ballot assures a position on the board. While this meets the legal requirements for a publicly elected board, it does not assure that sound management decisions get made. Historically, the Forest Hill PUD and management had used a strategy of deferred maintenance to keep water rates artificially low. Deferred maintenance is a polite term for not repairing or replacing the system as it ages. It shoves the economic burden of maintaining a water delivery system into a hazy and distant future. A second strategy was to ignore a simple economic fact. During a period when costs for everything from medical insurance to gasoline were skyrocketing, the cost of running the district was also escalating. This water district also had a dam they were responsible for. During the period from 2003 to 2011, inflation rose 23%. A gallon of gasoline went from $1.95 to $2.94. During this period, the district's rate stayed the same flat rate at $22 per month. With the added cost of paying for $3 million in bonds, the board and management made a very interesting decision about their water rates. They left them alone. It's not uncommon for publicly elected officials to have their decisions swayed by concerns over their popularity. This leads to decisions that relieve their stress levels short term, but create much bigger problems long term. And that is what I do not want to see happen to Joshua Basin Water District. And there's a couple of other bigger problems here too that people aren't talking about. One is the county and one is the state of California. The county has long looked at consolidating water districts, especially in the Morongo Basin. The county thinks that it'd be much more efficient to have a Morongo Basin Water District. All all these little taxes that get parceled out and all the costs of another district, a special district. And you have to think to yourself, would you like to be consolidated with High Desert Water District? Would you like to be part of paying for their sewer? Would you like to be part of a deal with them and Bighorn Desert View, who's bringing water to Pioneer Town? Would you like to see your allotment of water going to Pioneer Town? Not that they don't need good water. Or would you like to be consolidated with 29 Palms Water District? They've got chrome 6, fluoride, arsenic, aging infrastructure just like us. Or would you like to be part of the California Water District? The state of California, the Department of Water Resources, has been dowsing for water since the drought. Every month, every agency has to send their groundwater pumping figures and compare it to that month a year before. So they know who's got water and where it is. They would love to see that water go to the Central Valley. They know we've got water. They know we can get water. Would you like to be part of the California Water District? Not me. And you know what? They can even bypass that local agency formation commission process that would take place if the county did it. We'd still have to vote. It would be a big process. There is a law that allows the Department of Water Resources to consolidate if it feels that a water district is not able to maintain its infrastructure, pay its bills, provide fresh and safe water to people, and that's all they need as an excuse. And when Mr. Stang complained about us including the community service districts here, the county service districts, well, that would happen to everybody here if we were part of the county water district. That would actually apply to Joshua Basin. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to sit on a board and let that happen. So that's why it's not popular, it's not pretty, and it's going to hurt me too. I'm one of those low-income seniors. An extra $5 a month. I'm scrambling. But I'm not going to let Joshua Basin go down the tubes and be consolidated in some kind of Morongo Basin Water District or a California Water District. Not on my watch. So thank you all for coming, and thank you so much for your comments, thoughtful comments, caring about this water district. It is so important. And yes, this beautiful book, our capital improvement plan.
She brought hers to
I bring this to the farmer's market when I'm there. Starting in March again, us directors take turns being there, and I always bring this because I love this. I look through this, and it's all these great things we can do if we just had the money. Oh, and some of the things are really scary pictures because this stuff looks old and rusted and corroded, and we've got to do that work. So thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's time tonight. And I thank the staff. I thank you, Alex, back there. Kathleen, for all your hard work in getting the little inserts that I really like in everybody's bill. Because you know what? People will eventually pick this up and read it. We do have it on the website. We do put it in. And I don't know about you, but I'm so tired of getting email alerts. Those are the ones that I delete them right away. This, I will look at and I will read. So once again, thank you very much. I cede my time.
Thank you. Okay, my comment is much like the others. I think the greatest shame of this country is how the infrastructure that our parents and grandparents put together is falling apart. And board after board, government after government has kicked the can down the road and says, let somebody else take care of it. I think we're the people that need to take care of it, and we need to take care of it now, while it's still manageable. I don't want to wait, and I've been here, in August I'll be here 50 years, so I've been here a long time, seen a lot of changes. My original checks went to Joshua Basin County Water District, so we have not always been a special district. Being a special district gives us a lot of power as a community, and we should really, really treasure that. Okay, I think that much has been said, and do we have to read the resolution?
You can adopt it by title, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the,
May I remind you to, it's a dual motion to accept Bartle and Wells rate study
yes.
and to adopt the
Very much.
resolution.
do I have a motion to accept the Bartle and Wells study?
So make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We'll do it by voice. Tom?
Aye.
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 Aye. And the second one is
To adopt a resolution by
adopt the
title.
resolution. Do I have someone to make that motion? I think you need to read the title.
It's just the B part of the original motion. I think it's one motion.
Which
We
one?
could do it in two motions or one motion. Go ahead, go on with the second motion. I don't see it on the agenda, that's why I'm speaking up. I think it'd be, do I see on the agenda, accepting it and filing it?
Yes.
Look at item 1 on 7.1. So it does provide for two motions. You can move on to item 7.3, excuse me.
So do I have a motion on resolution 19-982?
I move that we accept the resolution of the Board of Directors of the Joshua Basin Water District approving an amendment to the district's rules and regulations, which amendment, 1, provides for increases to the district's water rates and charges, and 2, makes findings and determinations that the action taken in this resolution is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. Public hearing February 21st, 2018.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We'll do it by roll call. Director Sloan?
Aye.
Director Garrett?
Aye.
Director Johnson?
No.
Aye.
Aye. 4-1. Okay, the public testimony hearing is closed. We closed that a while ago. Questions by the board, actually by the board. We are on, so we've completed the rate increase and we've passed it. So if that's what you're here for and you wish to go. We'll go on to the general counsel's report. Not that you weren't a big deal, raw deal, but thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your input.
You know, Madam Chairman, I don't have a specific report, but I'm in awe. I go to a lot of board meetings, and I've been, over my years of experience, I've gone to a lot of rate hearings.
Hey, please, excuse me. Thank you.
I'll repeat what I just shared with you. I don't have a specific report, but I do want to tell you, I'm in awe of what happened, how the testimony that was presented tonight, not just by the public, but by the board. I go to a lot of rate hearings throughout the state, San Diego County, LA, Orange County, etc. And I've never seen a community operate like this one. It's heartfelt. Everybody who spoke, pro and against, it was a heartfelt testimony. And it's a tough decision for the board. Of course, I believe you did the right decision, but I'm very impressed by the democratic process that you utilize out here. Yeah, I haven't seen it like this before. It's usually bam, 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 very rubber stamped, and very, very unlike tonight. I just want to say I'm proud to be your attorney.
Thank you. And I'd like to see the Citizens Advisory Committee come back to us with some kind of a proposal so that we can provide legal money for disadvantaged people. We cannot use our money, the water money, because it's a gift of public funds. But if we can
I know it.
other dollars, I'd sure like to be able to do that. So Karen's
How much
gone,
is it?
but we will make sure
1
she
year?
hears and
Rental?
bring it back to you.
I know that.
General Manager's report.
Madam President, I have no general manager's report tonight.
Thank you, sir. Director's reports on meetings attended, comments, and future agenda items. We'll just go down the road. Rebecca.
I did go to the Finance Committee. It was great. Oh my gosh, Bob is always talking about it. It was great.
What do they do?
Yes, he was. I recommend the Finance Committee. It is everything he says it is. It is rip-roaring fun, and you'll love it. And then they didn't have the Water Resources Committee afterwards, but hopefully in March, there will be a Water Resources Committee following the Finance Committee. I recommend
We
it.
have a water resources guy now, so that
Somebody was communing with the whales, I heard, and so we weren't able to have our meeting.
Director Johnson.
Yes, the Finance Committee, I encourage one and all to come and attend. As you see, we get to crunch a couple this and that and look at alternatives and try to come up with some different solutions. And I do want to thank everybody for coming out, and for those that are, and especially I want to thank the board. We have grilled this thing up and down, and there's always a popular position and an unpopular, and we'd like to be representative as a board of that.
Thank you. Director Hunt.
Just wanted to say that I'm attending the water tour tomorrow morning at
Oh, lucky you.
8 o'clock bright and early in freezing weather, and I really encourage folks to take that tour, whether you take it tomorrow or the next one that's scheduled later in the month, or hopefully we'll continue to get the grant funding that we've been getting to give these tours. But I think it really gives a person great insight into just how complex and interesting this water operation is.
Yeah, it's a great tour. Is Kathleen still here?
Beverly is getting her.
I just wondered if Kathleen's going to report. Director Flom, is you, up to you.
There were some comments about where the money goes and all the other kinds of stuff earlier, and at the finance meeting, we do, I don't want to scare you, but we have stuff that looks like this, and we go through it.
Line by line.
Line by line, and we discuss things, where the money went, why did we do this, why did we do that? And our chief financial officer is always there, usually when he's not whaling or whatever, the general manager is there, and we talk about all this finance stuff. Johnny's been there, he's enjoyed and been excited by these things, I'm sure. And also regarding something about meters and prices of meters and 29 poems or something like that, the manager did this, the manager did that. To paraphrase him one time, some time ago, because we're relying on my memory here, he said, if you have a good idea, let us know. If it's a good one, we'll use it. We can't think of everything, he said. And so if somebody, Ed or anybody else, has something that looks workable, the staff is open to it. They certainly are, so bear that in mind. Just one more thing on the pipe. This old pipe that we have, I got reprimanded by the president for saying that the whole place is falling apart and all that, but I just noted with interest, she used that phrase herself. This old pipe, some of it's 70-plus years old. We're pushing, in a year, we're pushing about 916,832 gallons of water through those pipes every year. And we're asking a lot from those old pipes. And so it's kind of a justification, I think, that we have to consider when we proceed with these rate increases, which Alex tells us in his report are not high enough to do the job. Those are my words.
Substantial steps.
Yeah, it's a good step. It says, yeah, it says that in here. And also, if you have the post office, I've said this once before, if you have the post office deliver a gallon of water to you, it's going to cost $11.90 for 1 gallon.
If it gets there.
If it gets there.
On time.
Thank you.
Do we still have that old piece of pipe?
You have
think we
several
do.
pieces of old.
Yeah. We'll bring it to the next meeting. Yeah. I want to get Kathleen. So we should bring it so people can see what some of the old pipe looks like and why this was so important. Kathleen, I don't want to forget you tonight. So do you have a public information report?
Just like I said earlier, we do have room on the tours, and also we're back at the market this March. Board members, we are there to answer questions on water and help new people who come into the community understand that the water in the desert's very different lifestyle, as well as please keep reading the newsletter, stay connected to us. If you change a cell phone number or an email, And if you want to know when there's an emergency with water or something, and if we don't have your emergency contact information, you're not going to find out. So please stay connected. We are your water district, you're us, we're you, so let's make this thing work. And I'm at the market if you need to drop any information by instead of coming in here, so I look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Future director meetings and training opportunities. The Mojave Water Agency meets tomorrow morning at 9:30. I'm going to go in place of Director Johnson. Finance Committee, March 14th.
It's a beautiful day in March.
Mark your calendars.
9 a.m. is, oh, I see, they gave you an extra half hour. Probably a good idea, because they always run over.
It's because it's popular.
It's popular. So 9:30 is at 9 o'clock is the Finance Committee, and then Water Operations and Resources, which I am on, which is a much more interesting committee, is at 10:30. And the Technical Advisory Committee for Mojave Water Agency is on April 5th, and it will be a tour of VVWRA, Victor Valley Wastewater Reclamation Authority, which should be fascinating. So we're members of that, and if there's anyone, I will be going there. I am the representative for the TAPs. But if anybody is interested in that tour, let Beverly know, and we'll put you on the list.
When is that tour?
It is April 5th.
April 5th.
April 5th in the morning.
Do we take off at 10 a.m. from Mojave?
No, you're going to take off, you actually go to VVWRA, and I don't even know where it is, I have to look it
Oh.
up. It's going to start from there.
From there, oh, okay.
It's in Victorville.
It's in,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you.
You are smart, Alex.
Good, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Impressive.
Really smart.
Okay,
Smart Alex.
so with that, any last minute comments from any of the board members before we adjourn? Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for being
everybody.
here.
Yes.
You are the part of the water district.